We have a highly romanticized idea of how to discover who we are. The standard cultural advice is to pull back, isolate yourself in a quiet room or a mountaintop retreat, and look inward to find your true self. But human psychology does not actually work that way. You cannot figure out who you are in an empty room because there is no one there to provide a reflection. According to the sociological framework of symbolic interactionism, identity is a structure constructed entirely through repeated social interactions. The idea of a hidden, innate self waiting to be unearthed is a misconception. So if you have been withdrawing from the world to uncover your true identity, you have been looking in the wrong direction entirely. In 1902, sociologist Charles Horton Cooley formalized this process. He called it the looking glass self. The core theory proposes that we cannot see ourselves directly. We figure out who we are by observing how the people around us react to us and internalizing those reactions. You are not an isolated entity. You are the accumulated output of the human mirrors you stand in front of. Cooley outlined 3 mechanical steps for how a reflection becomes an identity. First, we imagine how we appear to others. Next, we imagine their judgment of that appearance, reading faces and body language to deduce what they think. Finally, we develop a core self-feeling based on that imagined judgment, experiencing pride or shame. That feeling eventually hardens into a permanent piece of our identity. A few decades later, George Herbert Mead took this out of the realm of pure theory and documented the exact process happening in child development. Mead observed children form a stable identity by learning to see themselves from others' perspectives. They adopt roles through play, practicing different positions in society. We can observe this clearly when a child is repeatedly told they are the responsible one. They internalize that external label over and over until their behavior permanently matches the appraisal. It is a learned adaptation rather than an innate temperament. What we perceive as permanent personality traits are learned performances that solidify into reality through a continuous feedback loop. This process runs your entire life, but the stakes are highest during your 20s. This is the critical decade where the concrete of your self-concept is poured. The people making up your immediate environment, your colleagues at work, your romantic partners, and your close friends, are actively supplying the raw materials for that concrete through their daily reflections. This chart shows identity malleability plotted against age. As we can see, there is a high, sustained level of plasticity early on. But once you reach your 30s and 40s, that self-concept calcifies and becomes measurably resistant to change. If you move through this window passively, your permanent adult identity will be dictated by whichever random people happen to be physically present. Your 20s serve as a fleeting window to intentionally curate the reflections you receive before they set permanently. They are not the time to isolate yourself in search of an inner truth. Because identity is a constructed output, you have the agency to intervene. You can actively change who you are by changing the inputs. Upgrading your self-concept requires a deliberate shift in the people whose appraisals you allow yourself to absorb. You can audit this in your own life today using a simple test. Identify the single individual whose opinion currently carries the most weight in shaping how you see yourself, and write down exactly what they reflect back to you. Then zoom out and evaluate your broader friend group. Ask yourself if these people provide accurate, aspirational reflections, or if they are simply familiar defaults of proximity. You must actively select the people who reflect you, rather than letting geographic or social convenience make that choice on your behalf. There is one vital limit to symbolic interactionism. Relying entirely on external reflections for your self-concept introduces a severe psychological vulnerability. If you outsource your identity completely, you risk developing a chameleon effect. Your sense of self will violently shift every single time you walk into a new room or change companies. A healthy identity requires a heavy internal anchor. You need a core set of internalized reflections that hold steady, regardless of who is currently present in the room. The objective of the looking glass self is to use society as a deliberate tool to forge a resilient core, rather than surrendering your self-worth to the whims of the crowd. The true self you are looking for exists, but you will never find it wandering alone in the wilderness. You have to build it, piece by piece, by choosing the right mirrors.